Hey everyone. Just as a quick introduction as we get settled, David is the founder of Nous, Sommes, Futur. Alexis is the Director of Sustainability at Adidas. We have some really exciting shoes here to talk about as well. And Clemence is the Creative Loop Captain at Pixelis. So thank you all for being here. And I do want to encourage, if you are interested in joining us, please come on up and ask any question you like. What I want to begin with is, we all work on embedding sustainability into organizations. And, and we all get, especially like yourself, interviewed in the media and talk about it, and especially in European, especially in French media. I was doing interviews this morning, and this word, sort of greenwashing gets popped around all the time. And I wonder, how do you advise an organization who is looking to start on a sustainability journey, but because every sustainability journey is going to start with one baby step, and because they're so big that their scale makes that journey seem, insignificant, and then is accused of greenwashing, and that can undermine even the beginning of the journey, let alone scaling it?
For me, at the beginning of the journey, if you start launching a new brand or something, it's because you are a sustainable native, So I think that that's it's easier for this kind of brand to keep continue and to go in that dimension, because their purpose is what they want to do and to tell and to sell and to monetize as a way to grow up and to be able to develop things. I think the challenge and the issue is for brands which are not native of sustainability, and to start thinking and switch and disrupt their way to think, and not to be in an excuse way, and to find a way to see in sustainability a new playground of creativity, because it's incredible all the things you can do with sustainability, and that's why I think that the title of this theme, "The War on Waste is a Story of Love," is really, really right. And in her, as a designer in Pixelis agency, every day we feel so lucky, to switch, to create things with that.
Let me just ask, because you're in that side, and today I really view the Adidas as a leading sustainability brand in shoes, but maybe it didn't begin that way. How do you grapple that question, especially this idea of the challenge of perfection versus doing something today that just may not be perfect out of the gate?
Well, this comes to life in many parts of the organization. I'm going to focus specifically on how that works in product, because when you were asking before what happens when you want to stick your toe out there and start talking directly to your consumers about something that's new and that's raw and perhaps not perfectly finished yet. I have something that's new and that's raw and that's not perfectly finished yet, so I'm going to hold it up, which is this is our Futurecraft Loop shoe. We launched it last week in New York, and this is a completely circular shoe. So actually it's made of one material, and the reason it's called a Futurecraft Loop shoe is because that's a program we use to show the world. It's our statement of intent. This is actually not a concept car in the sense that when we create something in Futurecraft, it means this is the direction the brand is going to go in. Flip side of that is I only have 200 pairs of these yet, and I haven't fully figured out how to get it into your local store around the corner. We're working on that. It'll be coming in 21. But if I bring it out now, and if I tell people about where we want to go, what we have found through Futurecraft is people will come to us and actually help us accelerate it and get us there much faster. And the amount of people who want to help you get there is huge. And actually, from the consumer point of view, is also huge. There's very few haters.
One question, so two questions. What is the material? And B, what do you need help with? You have a lot of great people around here, so let's crowdsource some support. What is still in the works on this, and where do you need support?
So, sequentially, what this is TPU. So we have a lot of materials that we use in our products. One of the hardest things to do with high-performance footwear is finding materials that can hold up to that stress. And so what you see in the Boost midsole, this is TPU. And we had to be able to make, because shoes are made up of 70 different parts, usually 12 plus materials, we couldn't separate them out, and so they couldn't become recyclable. So we turned them all into one material so that you could drop it in the grinder and then reuse all of the material into the new shoe. Now the part that...
So I just want to pause, it can go closed loop, like not
Yep.
downcycle, but into itself.
Into itself.
Amazing.
And so one of the things about coming out here imperfectly is we can't yet turn 100% only one shoe into an entirely one shoe. I'm working on that. I have a lot of the percentage going into my current shoes.
What percent?
Right now, the next generation we've already built a shoe is with 10. We're testing midsoles with 20, 30, 40%, outsoles with 50%. But I'm coming out here and telling you, like, that's not 100% yet. So we both need technology partners. We need recycling partners. But more importantly, what we're launching is a new business model. And that's the reason we put 200 pairs out there in creators' hands in different cities, because we're trying to find the business model that works best in getting your average Joe interested in engaging with us and getting it back. The greenies will always give it back, but your average sneakerhead might want to hold on to that sneaker or give it away. So we need to find a way of getting it back.
David, you work a lot in fashion and especially on the site. What is the culture that's needed in an organization to do something like this, you know, to enable it and then to be honest to say, here's where we're still lacking, here's where we need to work, here's where we are and where we go, and to make that a win in the short term so that you can build on that and then keep growing?
Well, it's actually this kind of culture you need. It's actually the kind of culture that's courageous enough to say, we're not perfect, but we're doing it. I think it starts also with a clear vision of where you want to go, because it's easier if you're a big group, it's easier this way, because you can say, okay, we're not perfect, we're doing this, it's one reference amongst 3,000, but that's where we start, and that's how we start. And I think in the company, once you've got a clear vision and you agree to start, then the biggest challenge is to cultivate the mindset of the company, to make sure that everyone is on board and along the project. And I mean, I want to start with that title, The War on Waste is a Story of Love. For me, it's really important. It actually says a lot just in these few words. It starts with inclusive design. If you think there's a war on waste, it means we have an enemy. And does anyone here in the room knows how do you truly destroy an enemy? Does anyone have an answer for that question?
Love.
You make him a friend.
Exactly.
And when you start that inclusive thinking, it's about, okay, we've got all of this. And this morning, some people talked about the externalities of the companies. And actually, when you start inclusive design, those externalities don't exist anymore as externalities. You consider them, you include them in your plan, you include them in your vision. And then because you become more inclusive, then you can come up with such a design. But it starts with that mindset. And
to complete, I think it's a question of inclusive design, but also in inclusive branding. Because personally, when I see this innovation, I think it's really an amazing skill. But what I ask myself is that, yes, we recycle the item, but when I buy a sneaker, I don't buy an item, I buy a story, I buy an emotion, I buy a mythic item. And that's why the consumers and the users and all of us here have Veja, we are Veja, and, but in reality love to buy more and more sneakers in Nike and Adidas because we love that brands and we love the stories and we love who we are when we wear these shoes. And so I ask myself, and I think that's so exciting, how can I do to make that this is the first step to imagine a new way to make the myth alive. And for example, I don't know, we can do that, we can, I don't know, for me, it's really an inspiration, you know. And you can say maybe tomorrow, Adidas can invent the, I don't know, the time max school, you know, vintage school. And because you have darker your shoes are, you change the color, and darker it is, and means like mature it is, means like cooler it is. And you can go again and again and further. That's so cool to, you know, to switch things.
maybe actually to build on what you're saying, we warned each other that we were going to do this talk a lot up on stage. So if somebody wants to interrupt with a question, you're welcome.
Yeah,
Of course, please
do.
come and discuss
Join
with us.
Try the shoe.
One of the things that you were just talking about is changing the culture around the excitement and interest in this. So when we launched this last week in New York, and one of the ads I'll link to on our page is basically it incorporates Willow Smith. It incorporates cultural icons. It incorporates people who people look up to for non-sustainability reasons, who happen to have those same values, but who are icons in and of themselves. And what you're actually doing is if I change as Adidas my footwear, so we have a goal that our biggest material will be 100% recycled polyester by 2024. That's a lot of polyester. So I have a lot of material, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm not a very big company. But sports, due to the emotion that it generates in people, and fashion, due to the passions that it generates in people, has an outsized impact on people. And it changes actually the perception and the desirability of these issues. So I am not very useful as Adidas if I don't actually also leverage that same capability to change what the cultural image is around circularity and waste. Because if I don't make this something that you see value in returning, see value in reusing, in all of this, then actually I've sort of not done my duty very well.
Yeah. I want to build on what you were saying, and I just want to ask welcome. I want to ask the audience a question, which is, and please answer this honestly, because waste is right now super sexy, what's happening here. How many of you, as you were in school, aspired to be in the garbage industry? Can you raise your hand? If that was an industry you were just craving, yeah? Oh, no, red, no. Please raise a green card if you actually, right on one. I want to highlight this because I'm going to pitch you on why you should be really excited about waste. Beyond the examples that you're seeing here is everything you see right now, with no exception, from the lights to the floor to your clothing to everything will be property of the garbage industry one day, with no exception, no exception. And we will have paid them to take it. It's the only industry that will own everything, with not a single exception. And because no one raised their hand, relative to that scale, it's really not innovative. You know, being in a really sexy industry, I think it's not so easy to keep innovating and being in the forefront because everyone is pushing, right? It's a really amazing opportunity that I think is greatly overlooked because we are built, you know, to be repulsed by the idea of waste. You know, we're in our animalistic tendency is to not want to be involved in it, to have it be rid of, and I think that echoes in the way talent goes to it. And
it depends of the market, you know, because already you speak about shampoo and bottle, and you say you don't want to keep it, so we need to get an added value to the product with this loop and everything. But with the shoes, with sneakers, at the beginning when I buy it, I want to keep it. So maybe tomorrow it should be, I don't know, you can imagine pass from a regeneration ID to a reincarnation ID. And maybe tomorrow I can run with my shoes coming from the Super Bowl final, imagine. Yeah. Because it's a piece of, you know, it's like a piece of the wall.
We're going to go right to your question, but you mentioned that the shoe is not just a recycling feat and a technical feat, but there's a business model that shifts. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Because I think that goes to what you're saying, is you also have to reinvent the model itself.
Yeah. Tell you what. How about I answer that question after she asks hers to double check and see, since we did want people up on stage and we thought we'd talk to each other a little too much.
Go ahead.
We'll come back to that, and why don't you go ahead with your question?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to tell you, the shoe looks amazing. I think it's a great idea. So thank you for presenting this. What I was wondering is that education is key, in my opinion. So we need to educate the consumer, and we need to educate them on how to better use everything that they use in their daily life. So how do you plan on educating the consumer when you sell this product? And secondly, when will we be able to buy the shoe? Very important.
Okay, I thought that was going to happen, so I'm actually going to put those two questions into one. So actually, the business model is going to be part of that education piece. And I veer away from that term education because it feels very parochial. It feels like you will be educated. This is more about driving incentives. So most people actually care about these things already, have some limited knowledge of it, and would like to. It's where the lack of information is in how you do it, and the continuous reminders and ease of being able to do something with it. So for example, one of the things that we're piloting right now, we've paired up with a startup called Stuffster. They have a unique capability of being able to spot price the residual value of an item. So you will go into, for example, your Adidas purchase list, and you will see a little button popping up that says, buy back, and then it'll say 30 euros. So, and literally, you will get 30 euros when you click on that, when you have checked in your product in returning it. You will start to be trained, and I will give you money back for your socks, for your dirty socks. You know, and this is just to give the feeling that there is value in those items. And I think in that way, it's so much more powerful than I can put out 15 different videos on like the importance of waste and saving the planet and cleaning the oceans and all of this. And you'll feel very passionately about that, but until you get the daily reminders, it's not sticky. And so we are testing, part of the reason why it's going to take a little while to get out here. Two pieces. One, we're doing technology transfer to Asia. We've built this in our speed factory with our partners in BSF here in Europe and in the US. We need to do some of that technology transfer into our manufacturing base, our bigger base in Asia, to make it mass level accessible. That'll take a little while, till 2021. And then the business model piece we're testing with those 200 creators I talked about now is because we already have senses of what will trigger people, but we really want to test and refine that. How do you engage them around communities? How do you engage them with these business models? And before I put it out to the whole world, you know, everybody like inner city football kids who may not be highly motivated by saving the world and saving the oceans, I need to make sure that this is something that will fit for everyday people, everyday Joe.
Yeah, just to complain about it, because I think it's interesting to find new pricing and business model to encourage people to get it back. But I think that maybe it's possible to invent new system with around the CRM and the communication and everything that you can, to starting now with all the other pairs and models that you can develop to help people to starting wanting to keep them and don't to get it back, because yes, I think it's impossible to wait for, you know, and maybe it's a way to say, to be creative is to saying that the idea of accumulation should be replaced by the idea of, you know, and maybe we can help people to saying, I have less shoes, but in my mind, I have a big collection of, and I can love them anyway. I
think you've actually already done one of the most important part of the job in making the shoe look so cool. Because in the past, another brand made a fully biodegradable shoe that was Puma, that was Cradle to Cradle certified. That was a few years ago. And they took one of their most iconic classic shoe, the suede, and they made it look not as nice as the original. And it was a failure in terms of business. And I think the moment you make such a cool shoe and you make it desirable and you make people want to wear it, then they will get to know the story. They will get to know everything else. And I think that's the first step, is, as a former fashion designer, is if the product looks cool and desirable, then there's a much better story to tell afterwards.
Can I build on this?
Absolutely, go ahead.
And I'll keep it short, because I want to give
ahead.
you time. So the whole like stealth approach on this, there's a reason why I got down off my chair and held up a different shoe. I walk around with a lot of shoes. So this was our first Parlay shoe. So we do an Adidas x Parlay collaboration. It's taking plastic off of beaches and coastal communities and putting them into our products. We use a lot of polyester, that's our biggest material, and that's what your bottles are. And so we were very pleased with being able to ramp this up. When we did the same thing like that, came out with a Futurecraft one in 2015, we could do one. Now we're at 11 million today. And the funniest thing is, we at Adidas are in some ways very good Germans in not talking enough about what we do. We've tended to engineer it, good German engineering, get it out there, and then not communicate it as much. So I was told recently, a little story, is that a friend's grandmother had bought these shoes, Parlay shoes, in the store, was wearing them around, and was saying, "Oh, I just love those Adidas X Parlay shoes." And they were thinking, "Oh, great, now we're going to talk about sustainability." She was like, "They're so comfortable. What great cushioning. I love that they're blue." And it was like, "Yeah, do you know what Adidas X Parlay is?" She's like, "That's a fabulous design." It's like, it's not, yes, but there's bottles from a beach, and then you get to engage in a conversation around somebody because they like your thing, because they've just been attracted for another way in.
Amazing. Would you like to ask your question?
So thank you for having me here. You are talking about recycling polyester, or TPO, if I'm right. Can you tell us how much of the shoes in percentage can be reused in another one? And are you really thinking about a new material? Because when you are talking about wear of waste, you have to think about a new raw material which is sustainable, like biodegradable, or which can be reused and transformed as much as we can without CO2, greenhouse gas emission and everything, but which can also disappear by himself if it go in the nature or anything like that?
So let me take piece by piece. So what you were asking is how much of the shoe is going to go into the next shoe? 100% will go in to the next shoe. So it will be completely, and has already been, we've had additions already gone in to the next shoe. In terms of materials, we have different materials needs in order to build a shoe that functions. One thing is, in the footwear industry, you have a lot of back and forth between designers from the car industry and footwear, because the stress on the materials actually goes under similar strains. And so we're needing to develop lots of different material paths to get us to that sort of full circular future. So this is kind of stage one. We're getting into stage 2 here. And Adidas is just trying to move that straight line economy from, the take, make, throw away into the natural circular loop. So in the first phase, you put waste in. You stop getting crap out of the ground and put it in. In the next stage, you've built on that recycled and you put recyclable in. And that's what you do here. In your next stage, which we call bionic, is when you either take from a recycled source or those advanced bio-based materials, the ones where actually it would reduce your carbon impact. Then you make it go round and round and round and round, because that's the most eco-friendly thing to do. And should it ever escape, then you have it biodegrade. And actually, that's where we're building to now.
Okay, so you are looking after it. You are trying to make new solution.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Thank you so much for your question. I want to just build one piece on, if you can hang out with us for a little longer, is that we need to, as we think about solutions like biodegradable, really think through the difference between technically degradable and practically degradable. And I want to just share a little story here, which is Tesco, the #1 retailer in the UK, has outlawed biodegradable. Industrially compostable packaging will no longer be sold at Tesco starting the end of 2019. And it's a wonderful thing because there was a big confusion between well-intentioned people asking a composter, can you compost something like PLA or biodegradable packaging? And the answer is yes. It will technically compost an industrial compost pile. But they asked the wrong question. The question should have been, would you like to see biodegradable packaging in your feedstock? And it turns out, if you live in the United Kingdom and you put biodegradable packaging into a green waste system, what the composters did is they would sort it out, incinerate it, and biodegrade what they really want, which is banana peels and coffee grounds that are rich in organic material. Which is why Tesco said we are never going to, or not never, starting 2019, we're going to stop doing any industrially compostable material, because while it does technically, it will not practically. And this is so important because how many of us were voting for biodegradable packaging thinking that that was a good thing, and yet it was never happening. And so if you're a product designer, the question you should ask the waste industry, which is the only one that really will be dealing with this, unless you do a take-back, closed-loop type system, is not, can you do something, but would you want to? And that question will be incredibly enlightening on how you design materials and make products.
I'll keep this one short, but I really want to drive a stake into that, and hopefully people will take it away, is when I said about the third phase, about the most environmentally friendly thing is that it goes round and round and round, and then should it ever escape, that's your insurance mechanism. The problem is a lot of the biodegradability standards that have been developed now have been developed for the food industry, and what we need is something where if this goes into your recycling stream, it does no harm to that stream. It can go forever. And what we have now is where a lot of things have made perhaps a not yet there step with biodegradability is you have to choose either or. And it'll either mess up the recycling stream or it'll go into that biodegradability stream. And for at least durable goods industries, we need something that prioritizes circularity, but does the safety valve, just in case.
And to build, and I think you wanted to say something, is that you want the recyclers to want to have the shoe in. Not that they could, but that they desire it. They're seeking it. You know, remember, recycling is urban mining, right? That's what it is. They're mining value out of waste, and everything else that they can't mine is going to be disposed. So the joke, by the way, is if you want to make every product 100% circular, make it from solid gold and diamonds and precious materials, and it will never become waste. It just won't be affordable. Go ahead.
I was going to say one important thing I think about the shoe in TPU is that because you use it in an environment, as you use the sole, TPU, although it's not perfectly biodegradable, within a couple of years, whatever came out of the sole will actually biodegrade the environment. And I think that's also an important point to make about the shoe, is to understand the context of how it's going to be used and where even the smallest part of it is going to go. And so that's why I think it's also a good material choice. And
absolutely.
And another thing, just to illustrate the example, I think that's when you want to go biodegradable, you should go like, that's C8 and jeans, that's fully biodegradable. And that's a good option because it's cotton and it's actually PLA less 10. But it's, that was the proper choice for that circular notion. And you should really make sure you know which circular stream you want to go into.
I would say as long as there is a system for it, right? So for example, if these jeans were made from, well, you know, these are cotton, right? So which is biodegradable, or if they were made from PLA, absolutely. But if they end up in a landfill, they'll mummify. You can find 80-year-old banana peels in landfills, which degrade super well. You can, if they end up in an incinerator, they'll just be burned for caloric value. If they end up in a reuser, which is where clothing will end up going, they'll go downstream to secondary markets. It's important that there is the willing place to take it.
The reuse strategy.
Exactly. Because without that strategy, it's all just fluff and intention, right? We need to make sure that there is a practical ability that I can take this and take it back. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to ask your question?
Excuse me, just a point, because we speak about a lot, and that's normal, we focus a lot about the industrial part of the topic, but for me that's not the Graal, you know, because it depends. When I eat some food, I need to buy it and buy it and buy it every week. But I think with sneakers and with shoes, I think Adidas is a wonderful, Nike, a wonderful sports brand. And I think my dream for this brand is to start thinking that maybe they can sell the idea of having something and making that people don't suffer to less consume things like with shoes, and that we can start without any industrial way, just because you want to make that people buy something more, an added value on one shoes, maybe something else, you know, because if we just focused on the industrial part, it's like to say maybe in 2024 we start to scale the model, and maybe in 2030. I'm sorry, but I think that these brands are really strong and dreamful, and I really want to see the dreams living in another way and stopping to be an items company but being a brand company, you know.
Yeah.
And the brand is a solution. The brand is inspiring, I think.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, this idea of moving to a service is the highlight in the end.
service
I want to make sure we have
you know?
time for your question. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I think this is great, and the only thing is that I can only assume that it's quite a costly process until now. And I was wondering what are constraints, or what, according to you, is needed for it to become an affordable process for you as a manufacturer, but also an affordable product for all, and not only like the richer people.
So that's why I brought 2 shoes up on stage. So you can't buy this right now, and you don't want to either because it's expensive. But so was this. So this was the Adidas X Parlay shoe that we held up at the UN. And we had 6 at that time. And you couldn't buy that one either, and it was incredibly expensive. Why? Because we had made it off of some bottles that we collected from a beach, pretty much sent on over on a boat, and there was no supply chain, and then there was fish nets that you pulled up out of the ocean. Like, wow, that's expensive. That was in 2015, and so that was our Futurecraft launch. It is now 2019, and we're doing 11 million.
What is the price on the 11 million?
They're same price as their Ultra Boosts that are in store.
How much is it?
So you have $120, $150
So reasonable.
models.
Like
yeah,
within-
like you
yeah.
can, it's the same as the other pair of shoes you would want to get. We intentionally put them at that price. That is what we intend to do with Futurecraft because we're looking to scale. And so right now, very expensive, let's not talk about, because that's R&D cost. But if we think about 4 or 5 years down, it will be just like your other shoes, because what we show with Futurecraft is that's the direction the brand's going. And that also, like you were asking before, what do you need out there? Why do you bother to put it out to people outside before it's done? We're trying to give a signal to the market that this is where it's going, not just, you know, at a small scale, but like big scale. Behind the 11 million Parlay shoes, the rest of all of our products is made out of recycled polyester. Those are bottles out of recycle bins, not off of beaches. Same kind of thing. You have to give those big signals out there, otherwise you don't move what the commodity price of something is.
I want to close with a question on culture here, because we've talked, thank you, from moving from linear disposal, linear systems where we landfill or incinerate, make, take waste, to recycling, to then, you heard earlier, you know, with other options about reuse. But in the first thing we learn in, you know, as a sustainability lesson is actually reduce, reuse, recycle. Do we think we can commercialize the idea of buying less?
It's a very tricky
yes,
question.
it's a creative,
Yeah.
it's a
So
creative
how would you?
playground.
Because that's the
course we can.
actual magic in the whole question. How do you make that profitable to buy less?
You create value differently.
Yeah.
So
I think, first of all, for companies to understand, we talk about virtuous value chain here. For many years, reducing negative impact was having a positive force that wants to make profit, is the economical force. Then you have 2 forces, social force, ecological force that kind of pull you down, you know, on the brakes. No, you cannot, you have to reduce the negative impacts. When you try to create positive impacts, then you've got 3 forces working together. Then you create much more value because you go from, you know, you get out of a vicious circle into a virtuous cycle, and you go from positive impact to positive impact to positive impact to positive impact. This is how brands that, in the first place, you will not be, as a company, if you do this, you will not be selling less, you'll be selling more, because this is where you want to see your growth. It's the other companies that don't do it that will be selling less. This is these people that will be losing value when you will be creating it. The thing is, as a species, we'll, you know, this is like, that's an idea of luxury that I love. Coco Chanel used to say, luxury is the need that starts where needs stop. It is where do you define that moment where actually your needs stop? I love sneakers, I love art. You know, can you live without art? Can you live without beauty in the world? And it's also that understanding that nature creates in abundance. That's what nature does. It creates in abundance. We've been talking a lot about scarcity here, but if you look at the flows of nature, it's abundance everywhere. And when you learn working with this, then you create value, and you create value in large quantities.
And we're out of time. Thank you, folks, so much for being here today, and thank you all for listening.